more on the story, we're joined, and on Gungubele's appointment, we're joined by Chair of the Board and former Executive Director at the Institute for Security Studies, Dr. Jakkie Cilliers, and Good Governance Africa Executive Director, Chris Maroleng. Good evening to both of you. Thanks for your time. Dr. Cilliers, let me perhaps begin with you. What do you make of this decision by the President?
Well, it's entirely within the Constitution. The President must either assume political responsibility for the control and direction of any of the intelligence services or designate a member of the Cabinet to assume that responsibility. That's a direct quote from the Constitution. And I think given what the Mufamadi panel uncovered about the intelligence community and the extent to which former President Zuma abused the intelligence community and used it to fight all kinds of things, and also to fight his fight against incoming President Ramaphosa, I think all that President Ramaphosa is doing is trying to provide a degree of greater hands-on control. I don't have any concern that President Ramaphosa will abuse the State Security Agency to the extent that it was abused. Everything he has said, his actions, his pronouncements, reflect no intention in that regard. The problem, the factionalism within the ANC is deeply embedded within the intelligence community, and I guess what he's trying to do is, in the run-up to the December 2022 ANC elections, is to have a degree of more direct control over what is happening in a department that really has become completely part of the internal battles within the ANC, and that clearly has also failed and is failing in its mandate, as we saw in July of last year.
Chris, you heard some of the opposition members there. They believe that this move by the President is precisely, in some ways, to help consolidate his position going into that conference of the ANC, and therefore not completely ridding the State Security Agency of some of the factional battles that it has been involved in. Your own views?
Yeah, let me start off by echoing the views of Professor Cilliers when he says that in terms of Section 209(2) of the Constitution, the President is allowed to bring the intelligence services, that is the civilian intelligence services, within his overview. However, having said that, I think this debate would be more usefully applied if we look at what are the checks and balances against excessive use, politicization of the intelligence services. That was not envisaged in Section 209 of the Constitution. And by doing that, what we can really look at is the checks and balances that exist really within the executive, where we see the President seemingly attempting to bring the intelligence services under his direct executive oversight and overview. But at the same time, there are questions that are outstanding about what the status of the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence is in our legislature. Of course, the powers and the efficacy of the Inspector General of Intelligence, who is really meant to report and oversee the intelligence structures through the legislature. There's also an ability still within the executive branch of the executive to impose a certain level of financial oversight, which was seriously lacking, as we see as expressed in the high-level review panel findings, and also in part 1 of the Zondo Commission report, which seems to indicate that the politicization of intelligence resulted in the oversight structures which are supposed to prevent malfeasance, politicization of the intelligence, really almost collapsing and not being applied.
Dr. Cilliers, some have looked at this move and say it is building towards the consolidation of a super presidency under the Ramaphosa administration. Do you agree with such a view?
No, I don't. I think that what we're all looking for is a presidency that acts more decisively and that has more capacity and that oversees and gives direction. And I don't think anybody can accuse the Ramaphosa presidency of that. if anything, the president has to act very carefully, because he came into power with a narrow margin in one faction of the ANC. He's slowly managed to turn the tables, but we still face a divided party. And so he's busy consolidating his power, but it's very gradually. I think certainly what I would appreciate is a stronger presidency. I don't think this has anything to do with that. I think this all has to do with the battles as we run up to December of 2022.
Chris, you talked about the checks and balances that would need to be in place to ensure that this move is not abused. When we look at the difficulties that the SSA has faced over the years, such a move also does not necessarily guarantee that there will be anything different, and that the overhaul that is, what is supposed to happen will take place in a way that is meaningful. How are we going to ensure that fundamentally that is what changes?
Absolutely, Kathy. And I think one of the outstanding issues we may receive further clarity as time moves on is what the status of a crucial part of the intelligence system is, which is the National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, which is really tasked with coordinating the inputs of both civilian intelligence structures that Minister Gungubele is now in charge of, and certainly the non-civilian intelligence services within the police services, that's crime intelligence, and also defense intelligence or military intelligence. It is not quite clear whether a NICOC, which has been known in the past to really prepare what are known as intelligence products for the use by the executive, whether its status in the presidency is guaranteed, or whether there will be an alternative organization that will ensure more effective coordination of intelligence. One of the key features of what we saw in July during the insurrection or the looting that happened in parts of South Africa was that it appeared that the early warning and indeed the coordination of intelligence just wasn't there and in place. And this talks about the operational efficacy. So decentralization, maybe, of the intelligence, civilian intelligence agencies within the presidency could be an attempt by the president not to usurp power for himself, but really to ensure more effective coordination and ultimately, from an operational perspective, effectiveness and efficacy of this very, very important part of the state institutions.
Dr. Cilliers, let me briefly then wrap it up with you. Minister Gungubele is also tasked with planning, monitoring, evaluation. Is it not all too much to put on his plate?
Well, personally, I think that there are many. We have a surplus of ministers with very small portfolios, so I don't think it necessarily constrains his ability as a Deputy Minister of Intelligence, who is going to be responsible. But the work is not going to be done there. The work really needs to be done within the structures, as Chris has been saying, the overhaul of the entire system. The State Security Agency is defunct. It needs entire re-establishment. And there are precedents for this, actually, under the National Party, who brought in Neil Barnard to take over BOSS and clean it out. It had quite remarkable impact, and I think that's exactly what President Ramaphosa needs to do. The danger, of course, is that in that process, you let loose a faction of RED supporters, because that seems to be the dominant faction within the State Security Council, and that they become a further destabilizing factor this year, which would be very concerning.
All right, let's leave it there for tonight. Let me thank you both for your time, Dr. Jakkie Cilliers and Chris Maroleng there.